All right, that was Eric Spoelstra, head coach of the Miami Heat, Ime Udoka, head coach of the Celtics, and Vinny Goodwill. Say hello to Burt Breer. Burt Breer filling in for Mike Smith today. And I got to tell you, Pat Riley, Spoelstra mentions Riley. No, he kind of understated it. Like, yeah, Pat's going to enjoy this. Vinny, do you remember when Pat Riley sent out a press release? This is an actual press release on Miami Heat letterhead. He said, Danny Ainge needs to shut the F up. Okay, but he didn't say F. Okay, Danny Ainge needs to shut the F up. He was a whiner when he played, and he's a whiner now. So there is no lack of animosity in this series. That aside, Vinny, who do you got here in Miami, Boston?
Doesn't it bring up such good memories? It feels like a warm blanket of rivalry, of hate. You know what I mean? Like, this is the NBA that I kind of grew up loving, even though, my teams and the Boston teams had like this blood feud for so many years. So I know you guys don't sit on the same side of things that I sit on. But for this series, you've got stubborn versus resilient. Now, you can take and apply each definition to each term to both teams because they fit. But I think Miami is going to come out on top here. I wonder if that Milwaukee series took so much out of the Boston Celtics that they don't have the emotional capital to rev up against the Miami team that plays like this all the time. And for me, with the Miami Heat, it's a matter of, are they going to shut out Jason Tatum? You look at what they did with Joel Embiid. You look at what they did with James Harden, even though so much of what James Harden did was self-inflicted. You look at what they did with Trae Young. They go after the stars. If you're a star player, high volume scorer, they're going to send the dogs out after you. It's on you to make the secondary plays, whether it's the Jaylen Browns. I don't think Grant Williams is going to be getting 16 threes in a game again. I wonder if the experience of the Heat, along with them knowing, hey, this may be our one chance to get there with the group that we have, with the age of the players that we have. If you're Boston, you're feeling like you're at the beginning of something. I think there's a desperation with the Miami Heat that might sit in that does not quite exist with the Boston Celtics. Not that they can't afford to lose, but I wonder if Miami's just a little bit more desperate, a little bit more stubborn. And I think that wins this series.
No, that's a good point. I wonder, Vinny, if you think Boston could do to Miami what it did to Milwaukee with just kind of frustrating Giannis. Certainly didn't shut down Giannis. He had a historic series, but field goal percentage dropped by about 10. Kevin Durant had his numbers in the first round series, but the field goal percentage once again was down. Do you think Boston is able, and not that Miami is built like those teams, but do you think Boston can go in and say, look, we're taking Jimmy Butler away from him? You ain't gonna see the same Jimmy Butler. We ain't gonna lose to him. So we are gonna focus our defensive efforts on Jimmy Butler, and the rest of y'all better step up and be scorers. You think Boston has the ability to do that?
I think if you try to do that, you will play right into Miami's hands, because Jimmy Butler is not the focal point of any level of offense the way that Giannis was, the way that Kevin Durant was. And there's no mental things going on with this team like it was with the Brooklyn Nets. They were just an incomplete, fractured ball club. And they're not missing a Chris Middleton like Milwaukee was in the second round. If Chris Middleton plays in that series is over in 6 games. Let's not get hasty here and crown the Boston Celtics like the new age greatest defense of all time just because Milwaukee was missing their best shot creator. Like, let's not forget that. I know Boston was without Time Lord and everything else, but shot creation is so very important. You got to see that in that second half of Game 7 where they were really, really missing Chris Middleton. Miami does not have those issues. They're not centered around one player. So, yeah, you can go ahead and focus on Jimmy Butler, and then Tyler Hero can go off and bite you. Or you can focus on Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo go off and bite you. They play to the point that, yeah, Jimmy Butler can get 30, but so many guys are built there to get you at least 15 from the Gabe Vincents. And if Kyle Lowry can come back, they are built to be more evenly spread out, and then allowing Jimmy Butler, who's being more of a jump shooter now than he's ever been during a regular season, more of a three-point shooter. You can't pack the paint on him maybe the way that you could on Giannis. Now, he's not the force that Giannis was, inside the paint, but it's not going to be as easy of a strategy, I think, for Boston to play the same strategy on Miami. I think if you do that, you play right into Eric Spoelstra's hands.
And Vinny, I would think like part of it too is like how replicable what Boston did in the Milwaukee series is, right? Like it felt like there were a couple of unicorn performances there, whether it was Al Horford earlier in the season, obviously, or in the series, obviously what Grant Williams did in Game 7. I think that'd be part of the concern, right? Like is that you had a couple of games in there where you got bailed out by a certain player having a certain level of game that maybe he won't be able to replicate against the Heat.
Not just that, but I think here's my theory on playoff series by and large. The best player in the playoff series can get you one game. He's responsible for getting you one game. Now, whether that's a game 6 or a closeout or whatever, but he's going to give you that. He's going to put you above that line. If that's Jason Tatum, you saw what Jason Tatum did in the game 6 where he scored 46. Can you count on that level of performance if Jimmy Butler is in his face for 45 minutes? That's my issue more so than Al Horford giving you 40, because in Game 7, Al Horford, or Game 6, Al Horford was just as important defensively, and he scored 2 points. And he was like 1 of 7 from the field, and he grabbed 9 rebounds, and he had some assists. I wouldn't be worried about the scoring part. If I were the Celtics, I'd be worried about, can Jason Tatum replicate that one game in the series where we need him to be the best player on the floor for 48 minutes to lift, like, rising boat lifts all tides. If he's that type of guy, you're worried about him being able to replicate that type of thing. Because one thing I know for sure, Boston is not going to be able to just ISO him and Miami not make an adjustment. They're going to try to make Jaylen Brown or Marcus Smart have a 5 3-point shot game or something like that. So I get your point about, these unicorn games happening. I'd be more worried about them taking away what you do best, which is Jason Tatum having the floor spray and everything. That's what I would be worried about if I was Boston.
All right, now, Vinny, you're out in San Francisco for the Western Conference Finals. Mavericks, Warriors. A lot of us saw the Warriors. A lot of us didn't see the Mavericks. Why are the Mavericks there? Well, this is where it gets interesting. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. There are a lot of reasons. A team that won 64 games in the regular season, 8 more than anybody else, more road wins than anybody else in the league. There's a lot of reasons they didn't show up in Game 7. But it's a lot of fun, isn't it, to focus on their point guard. So once again, Chris Paul doesn't get it done in Game 7. So everybody from the person at the barbershop to the person on First Take, I'm talking about you, Pat Bev, to just a random person in the stands says, Chris Paul he ain't got it. Chris Paul's not a winner. How do you assess the series and specifically like the moment for Chris Paul?
Okay, I know it's real easy for me to take this victory lap, right? Because I told y'all, Albert, you weren't here. I told Michael Smith and I told Michael Howley that Chris Paul, as great as he is, has fatal flaws. One is him being hurt. The other is him not necessarily coming through in Game 7, because the way that you build a team around an 82-game season with the way that he plays is not necessarily the way that you can build a champion. Like, he's a winner. I think Chris Paul is one of the greatest winners when you look at his body of work. He's not yet a champion. And that's not to say anything against him, but when you build a team around everything that he does well, he controls the game as well as anyone. He does all these textbook point guard things. When you need a player to do more than 16 and 12, when you need a player to take more than 10 shots, taking 10 shots is real cute and real fun for the analytics people to say, hey, sometimes you can take 10 shots and you can control the game as if you took 30. Sometimes you need to take 30 shots because your other guys don't have it. Sometimes you need to take control of the game, wrap your arms around it, even if you're not making 15 or 30 shots, but you need to have a level of force on the game, of unpredictability on the game, that by the time Chris Paul made his first shot the other night, they were down 38 points. The game was over. Ooh. You can't play the same game every game. And this is why, Michael Howley, that I said that there is no discussion about Chris Paul and Isaiah Thomas, the original. There is Magic, there is Isaiah, and then there's everybody else. Yes, I'm going there, Michael Howley. You are right. I am going there.
Hey, Bird. What? He's right. Hey, Bird. See, this is what it is. So we start off talking about, and Vinny, you don't know. I got a ringer here. So Bert not only is a dope NFL reporter, you know what? Bert went to school Bert went to Ohio State, okay? He's an Ohio State Buckeye. And Bert, just so you know about Vinny, Vinny's from Detroit. This is Michigan people. See what Michigan people do? It always comes back to Michigan and Detroit and the Pistons and all that. So that's what he did.
It feels like there's an old axe being grinded here, right? Like, Holly, you think Isaiah's overrated? Because I'm not on board with that.
I don't think he's overrated. No, he's properly rated. He's properly rated.
He's underrated. He's underrated and underappreciated. How dare you? And Albert Breer, I won't even mention what happened 2 days after Thanksgiving last November. I won't even go there. We won't even go what happened on that Saturday in Ann Arbor on that snowy day. We won't even mention what happened there. The revenge of Michigan.
They got one.
Finally,
they got one. Give it to them.
Yeah. New World Order, baby. NWO. We coming back for it. Now,
when our quarterback had the flu, it was snowing out. I mean, and I'm not one to make excuses. We'll just see what happens in November.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in November.
What usually happens.
Well, I mean, you guys then what happened when you guys got to the national stage? Couldn't quite measure up, right?
So your win over Ohio State, that was their playoff game. Their win over Ohio State was their playoff game. Then they went up against Iowa.
Can we go
in the Big Ten
to
Conference
the lecture
Championship?
at?
See,
can we go back to the
Jim
lecture
Harbaugh
at
was
hand?
making. Jim Harbaugh
Can we
was
go
making
back to
all
the
these
lecture at
comments.
hand? Can we go back to the lecture at hand?
Jim Harbaugh was making all these comments about third base. Michigan didn't look so good when they got to third base.
We did not. We did not look so good. Back to the lecture at hand. The reason that I place Isaiah and Magic above everybody else is because they give the game what the game needs. When you look at the stats can be very sterile and very empty. When you need a guy to go out and give you 40, when your other guys don't have it, you need to have a guy that can take the game and say, you know what, this is not usually in my character, but I'm going to give it 35 points. I'm going to give it 40 points. That's Magic playing at center, against the Philadelphia 76ers 42 or something years ago today. That's Isaiah Thomas in the form in Game 6 in 1988 saying, we've got to win a championship today. And then he sprains his ankle and still scores 43 points with 6 steals and 8 assists. Those are the type of performances that your point guard needs to have in these situations, especially if he's small. And this is a big man's game. So when you spin it forward to what Dallas is going to do against Golden State in this series, who's going to be able to lift? Is that going to be Luka Doncic being the best player in this series? Or is that going to be Stephen Curry breaking a shooting slump that he's been in basically throughout this entire playoff, breaking through, getting open shots? Or is this going to be Luka Doncic doing what LeBron did in 2007, which is unexpectedly romping through the conference on his way to the NBA Finals in year 4?
I got one more question, Vinny, on the Suns, because I think they're in such an interesting spot, right? Because obviously Chris Paul's aging, and we'll see how much longer he makes it. DeAndre Ayton's up. What do they do coming off of this? And do you think, in some ways, I know you don't want to overreact because they won 64 games, right? But sometimes, it feels like a game like that, like an ending like that, can be a referendum on a whole program. So how do you think the Suns come out of this now?
I think when you zoom in all the way out, you're saying, man, we got Chris Paul, and we went from a lottery team that had not a footprint on the NBA landscape to going to the NBA Finals to then winning 64 games. And you say, man, we made more out of this than we ever could have, right? The back end of this is now you've got 3 more years of Chris Paul, and you're hoping that he stays healthy and stays upright. The question, Albert, is this system sustainable? And by system, I mean, can you have Chris Paul dominating the structure of your offense and not having another shot creator, not having another focal point of your offense? Maybe that's the reason why DeAndre Ayton might be a little unhappy, because he should be getting more touches. He should be being more of a focal point in the offensive end, but then that lessens what Chris Paul can do. And the question is, what is good for 82 games? Is that going to be good for 21 games in the postseason? And I do think that is a legit question, because, Albert, they didn't just have problems against Phoenix. They had problems against 8th-seeded New Orleans after the play-in tournament. So it's a lot of things that you have to reevaluate in the playoffs. I'm not one to overreact, but I am one to say, let's look at the sample size and see exactly where we're going with our goals. If they're trying to be a championship team, you've got Denver that's coming, you've got the Clippers that's coming, maybe Golden State isn't going anywhere, Dallas looks like they're for real. You have to make some real changes about what you want to do just to keep pace.
I'll tell you, here's my last one for you, Vinny. I'll give you Magic over Chris Paul. I'll give you Isaiah Thomas over Chris Paul. And you know what? How about the coach of the Dallas Mavericks, Jason Kidd?
Yeah.
You might have to go Jason Kidd. He did everything he could to bring it. He never won a championship with the New Jersey Nets, but he did win one with the Mavericks. And this team kind of reminds me, this Mavericks team kind of reminds me of that one in that they were Dirk and a lot of good players, but Dirk was their superstar. This is Luka and a lot of good players. Are you going to be bold enough to pick the Mavericks over the Warriors in 7 games?
I am sitting in San Francisco right now. Do you think I'm a fool? Like, no, absolutely not. No. I will say this. Dallas is giving me pause because I think their defense is really, really underrated. Like, their defense is so good that it's making up for the fact that Luka Doncic isn't defending. Luka Doncic might be one of the worst defenders in the league, but he's playing in one of the better defensive units in the league. And you're right about Jason Kidd. The fact that he is coaching his behind up, the fact that we thought so many things. I don't mean we as in me, but we as in a basketball public thought so many things about Jason Kidd and his lack of coaching acumen, that he is making everybody eat some crow right now, because nobody would have expected that they go from Rick Carlisle to Jason Kidd and have a considerable upgrade. And not only how the players play, but how they're prepared, how much they win, their in-game strategy. You don't think of Jason Kidd in that way, and maybe it's time that we start thinking of Jason Kidd a whole lot differently. I gave him some strong consideration on my Coach of the Year ballot, but I'm not that brave to pick Dallas quite yet, because I think they're going to make Luka work a little bit more. You can't really hide him on defense the way that you could with Chris Paul, not being necessarily someone who pressures the defense. All Golden State has is a bunch of guys who run around and try to pressure the defense, unless Draymond Green decides that he doesn't want to shoot at all. And I think he knows he has to be aggressive here. Draymond Green might be the key to Golden State getting out of the Western Conference Finals, because let's be perfectly honest, they did not play well against Memphis. They just happened to be in a situation where experience beats stupid.
All right. Vinny Goodwill, always bringing the smarts though, man. I appreciate you. I can't wait to see what happens in these conference finals, man. I think I love the Final Four that we have here. 2 good series, I think. We'll check in with you later, Vinny.
See y'all, man. Appreciate y'all, man.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.